Hello, welcome to At the Movies, What You've Been Watching at Home edition. Today we're going to be talking about 4 new movies that I'd like to recommend to you. And just for you, those who don't know, this is an extension of the At the Movies show, which normally goes out on the Cat Community Radio here in Crewe and Nantwich on 107.9 FM or online on thisisthecat.com. At the moment, the show is taking a sabbatical whilst we wait for the cinemas to reopen. So here we are talking about favourite movies. Of course, we always recommend that if you want to add your own film likes on what you've seen recently, you can post them on the social media page here below, and we'll read those out next week. So, this week what we're going to talk about are 4 films, as it's been up for all weeks. One of them is a brand new movie that's recently been released to watch at home. We've also going to be looking at a classic movie in a series of classic movies I've been watching recently to allow us to have a look back at where the technical innovations and story innovations came from. We're also going to have a look at a film from the 80s and 90s in our rewind section, where we basically revisit a movie from that area and compare it to how it stands up today, because it's amazing how sometimes they do and then sometimes they don't. And then finally, we're going to look at another recommendation that was given to me that I have never seen before that I should watch. So there we go. Those are the 4 movies we're going to be looking at. Those are the 4 styles of movies we're going to be looking at. And we're going to look at these movies now. So we're going to start off with this one. Now, this is the new movie that's been recently released, which is Jojo Rabbit. This one came out about 2 weeks ago. Jojo Rabbit. It is a fantastic film. It's written and directed by Taika Waititi. It is an unusual idea. The basic premise is about a boy in Germany, in Nazi Germany, who is part of the Hitler Youth, is very much into the whole ethos that they've been sold about Nazi Germany. And he finds out that his mother is actually hiding a Jewish girl in their house. And what leads from there is him questioning the blind leadership of Nazi Germany and what is right and what is wrong, and where does he stand in that. Of course, this is a very serious matter, and the interesting twist about this movie is the fact that the boy throughout this movie has an imaginary friend who happens to be Adolf Hitler. This is played by Taika Waititi in a very incredibly clever way of doing it. It's very funny, but nevertheless, the storyline itself is very good. It's very deep movie. It's a very interesting film to watch. There are times where you find it very funny, and then all of a sudden it hits you with a very hard beat, and it sort of sets you off a little bit because you're not too sure exactly how to take that. And it just explores what comedy can be like when it comes down to telling a serious story. Taika Waititi is known for his very unusual movies, his very out there kind of approach to movies. But it works so well with this film. It's got critically acclaimed. I definitely recommend having a look at Jojo Rabbit. It is not uncomfortable either if you're worried about that. It is a film that's very smooth and the characters are very well written. It is a joy to watch. Co-stars, you've got likes of Stephen Merchant, you've got Taika Waititi starring Rebel Wilson, Sam Rockwell, and Scarlett Johansson in it as well. So yes, definitely recommend seeing that film. In terms of the classic range, what I turned to was a 1962 movie, which is Lawrence of Arabia. Now, this film is incredible by a lot of standards. The great thing about this film is it is CinemaScope amazing. It's shot so well. The story is very gripping, and of course, with Peter O'Toole in the lead role of T.E. Lawrence, he is incredible. He was basically an unknown at the time, picked out primarily for the fact that he looked like T.E. Lawrence, whom the story is based upon, and it was just an incredible scope to pull off. This one won 7 Academy Awards. It was an incredible feat of engineering. I definitely recommend having a look at Lawrence of Arabia. It is... What stood out the most for me is the cinematography, the fact he shot actually on location in the Middle East. Apparently part of the story behind the scenes is that where they were shooting, they actually came across a train that was still in the desert after it had been derailed by T.E. Lawrence in the First World War. It was still there, just sitting half buried in the sand. So the director absolutely made sure that it was on point and it was true to the story itself. Apparently there was a little embellishment, as more Hollywood movies tend to do, but it is very worth the watch. Peter O'Toole is incredible in this. His acting style is that good. You can't quite pin whether Lawrence is a moral character or an immoral character. In fact, the character himself actually goes through questioning his motives and questioning who he's becoming because of the war, which is an amazing psychological dive into how war affects people. So that's Lawrence Arabia. That one is an incredible film. Definitely recommend on that one there. Next one we'll look at is a recommendation to me. This one is Bridge of Spies. Now, this one is a Steven Spielberg film with Tom Hanks in the lead role. It's based on, inspired by a true story, set in the Cold War in the 1950s about a lawyer who is assigned to a spy who is found in the US and ultimately leads to having to swap with the Russians with spies across this bridge. What leads to it is an incredible questioning of tactics, the fact that it's very similar tactics, the question of this escalation, we don't trust you, and therefore why should you trust us? And it's kind of a very much a back and forth on that. It does question the whole issue of why these things escalated during the Cold War. It's beautifully shot as well, and it really captures that fear of the wall, Berlin Wall going up in the turn of the 60s. It's an incredible film to watch. I would definitely recommend having a look at that film there, and that's Bridge of Spies. Finally, we come to our rewind movie. This is where we have a look at a movie that came out in the 80s and 90s, and we review it through today's lens and see how it holds up. And the one we picked out was Waterworld. Now, the interesting thing about Waterworld, of course, it got panned when it came out. It was one of the biggest, most expensive flops of its time. Kevin Costner put a lot of personal money into this and a lot of personal effort into this, and it did not pan out at all. However, it is an interesting movie because, of course, the basic premise is it's about a world that's covered in water now after the polar ice caps have melted, and everyone just lives on the ocean itself, either in flotillas or rusting ships, or just in terms of trying to survive. Kevin Costner plays the lead role, who's called the Mariner, who happens to have had a genetic change to allow him to have gills, which of course stretches the plot a bit. And that's where the film kind of fell down at the time, was the fact that there's a lot of stretching of reality in this. If you see the film, you know what I mean. It's just, you're thinking this is set for 500-600 years in the future, and this is what they've got. It didn't quite make a lot of sense. However, the film action sequences hold up, primarily because they were all done for real. They didn't skimp on when it came down to the action scenes themselves, the wire work, and being out on the ocean itself, and all the work they did on the water is all really done. So therefore it holds up so well, and it is an enjoy to watch the stunts that are performed in this film. The only thing when it comes down to the length of time it's been since the film was released to now that lets this film down is the music, the soundtrack. It sounds like how can I put it? It reminds me of an overhyped pirate theme tune that you would expect on a movie. Not Pirates of the Caribbean. Think further back than that. A bit cornier than that. And it's very, very dated in terms of its music, and it does kind of put it off in terms of what you'd expect the tone to be like with movies these days. So just be wary of that when you watch the movie. It is a bit jarring when you get in to watch the film, but nevertheless, I mean, I know it got panned, and I know the story is a bit ridiculous in terms of some respects, but nevertheless, it is still an enjoyable film to watch. So there you go. Those are my 4 recommendations. I've also had a couple of recommendations come through as well. From one of the regular listeners of the show, which is awesome. I'm going to read these out here from Helen, and these are her recommendations. So we've got very disappointed in by Fantasy Island. This is a new movie. Having fondish memories of the TV show, for which it is a prequel. Plot was a bit patchy and the storylines didn't mesh very well for me. As a fan of horror, it wasn't the least bit scary. I did enjoy, but also guessed well before the tiny twist at the end, which was a nod to the show. So that's her review of Fantasy Island. She also says she watched Vivarium. Now she says this: Vivarium was great. Very different, very claustrophobic, quite chilling. Jesse Eisenberg is always good to watch. And again, the twist at the end could be seen a mile off, but it just added to the unease. on that one there. And then finally, she also adds on this review as well, and that is the film Tag. And she says this: a bit daft, but fun with some great actors who clearly are enjoying themselves. And I will admit, I've seen Tag, and I definitely agree with that there. So there you go. That's this week's little bit of what you've been watching at home. Thank you very much for having a look at this. And of course, we will do another one for next week. If you've got any other recommendations, as I said, just post them below like Helen did, and I'll read those out next week as well. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.